Thank you very much for having me talk about Spoonmoney today. When I decided to step into the world of entrepreneurship, it was with the intent of addressing what I thought was a financial services need. Having worked in financial services with Tracy along the way, one of the perennial issues is the issue of not having people not saving here in South Africa. And having run my own family stokvel for 15 years, I was very aware that there was a dedicated body of savers who really saved incredibly well and for lots of the time, but were actually really badly served by financial services players. And I thought this was a great entrepreneurial opportunity to address. Well, my first foray into that was an epic fail in that I couldn't find stokvels because, funnily enough, even poor people aren't that comfortable talking about their financial affairs. But after lots of persistence and finding a way through, Spoon got to a point where we developed a product actually working with stokvels. And it certainly wasn't what we had originally thought we were going to do. We ended up discovering that not all stokvels are equal, and there are about 5 million variations on that theme. But we settled on what we called lending stokvels, who effectively operate like microbanks in townships. And what they do is pool deposits from members and effectively lend that money out to other community members and effectively earn a return on their money. Brilliant system, great investment strategy because you're effectively generating returns of anything between 30 and 50% a month. So when I came along with this idea to give these amazing savers better value for their money by investing it in something like a passive fund, well, very hard to compete with 30 to 50% a month. And so we segued into something altogether different. It's, in the world of entrepreneurship, there's lots of iteration. You've got to be prepared to be super flexible, and we were. And in discussions with our clients, because at that point we were acting as the reserve bank, asking them, effectively providing additional funding into these microbanks, and for them to effectively make a turn on our money, we discovered that a whole other need. Realizing that the customers of Stokvels were not only their members, but these other community members of the community were actually micro businesses in need of working capital. And because there is so little capital, and certainly outside capital in these environments, it is incredibly expensive, hence the 30 to 50% returns. And as an entrepreneur, and yet another opportunity knocked. So we decided to focus our efforts entirely on micro businesses. And this is effectively the business that Spoon runs today. We provide a combined, today, saving and credit solution into women-run, deeply informal businesses. Customers typically are street vendors, or they may have hair salons, or be nail technicians, or bake muffins from their home and sell them at a school. So a level of informality, which quite honestly can't be addressed by the formal sector because they don't have 3 pay slips, and they certainly don't have any business records, so incredibly difficult to access formal credit and working capital in order to grow their businesses. And enter Spoon. We have developed a methodology which allows us to be able to assess these businesses and effectively price the risk in order for us to be able to give them loans. But I think more importantly today is this issue of savings, which we've also been able to incorporate. Given that it was very much at the heartland of what we wanted to achieve when we started Spoon, it's been really great to be able to go back to that. But we've been a little bit sneaky about how we've done it, recognizing that there is this incredible need for credit. we've kind of attached savings onto this platform, frankly, as a compulsory entry into the accessing the credit. But this is not unusual in the environment, because this is exactly how Stokvels operate. You have pooled assets and pooled deposits, and people from that pool, effectively money gets lent out. Well, in Spoon's case, we don't lend our clients money out. We're happy to say that we in fact invest it very diligently, and we have outside capital being used to fund loans. So we have this kind of sneaky way into saving. But actually, as I say, it is relatively familiar to our customers, because the notion of Stokvels is incredibly prevalent and understood and well practiced within these environments. So what do we do with customer savings, and how on earth have we managed to persuade them to do this? So I think there are two things. Firstly, we recognize that Stokvel money generally and regrettably is deeply geared towards consumption. So as Tracy was saying, in a normal circumstance, a Stokvel would pool this money, accumulate returns, very much with an end goal, which is November, December, in order to disperse all those funds and come January start from ground zero. Spoon has tried very hard to change this behavior, and in fact we're quite insistent that you need a very, very, very good reason to actually disinvest your funds with Spoon. And we do this because we effectively provide our clients two products within the savings environment. On the one hand, we're saying, if you really and truly have an emergency, well, let's build an emergency fund for you. What it is a money market fund, but the terminology is difficult to explain, and the product, while relatively simple, really one doesn't need to know how a computer works, right? And what our clients need to understand is, if they have an emergency, there's somewhere they can go for that money, as opposed to dipping into their business, which is regrettably often the case. And so what we have done is, on the one hand, put money into a money market fund, which we've absolutely articulated as an emergency fund. And really, we're building up savings here for, I don't know, doctor's bills and funerals and all the regular emergencies that people have. But we also think the much more interesting product that we've also introduced into our product line is a long-term wealth creating fund. I have to confess, it's not a passive fund. It's a fairly regular balanced equity fund. But the whole idea here is that we are encouraging our clients to think much more long-term and be very much more future-focused. And we've articulated this particular fund as your kids' fund. In other words, get your hands off it and forget you have it, because this is designed for your children. And that's how we talk about it, an emergency fund and your kids fund. And really that's really helped us get over a hump of trying to explain quite difficult concepts in terms of how these products may or may not perform. It has been quite a challenge to explain, that markets, perform, and as we say, they go up and down, and it's been a challenge for us to be able to really find language which is super simple for our customers to understand, not because they're stupid, but because financial concepts are quite difficult, actually. And that's been a learning for us, and quite a journey. So Spoon in its current form is this combined saving and credit solution. And really our aim, which has been to stimulate economic activity in these very depressed environments, I think is finally bearing fruit. We're stimulating businesses to grow through our working capital loans, and we're also encouraging customers to think more long-term and actually finding a way to divorce their personal and business finances. And Tracy, yeah, that's where we are today and what we've been about. We've been in the fortunate position of working with just over 2,000 customers so far. And yeah, that's us, that's Spoon.
Thanks, Nikki. And it was just great hearing the story again. I know I've heard bits of it, but I just think it's truly amazing. I think we should all have to save before the bank gives us gives us a loan. So I think the behavioral lessons that we can take from this apply to ourselves, not just our clients and customers, but apply to ourselves is, I mean, you've basically almost in a way packaged what we all need. Save before you spend. Have something for an emergency. Don't dip into your business. Don't dip into your other savings. Don't dip into your children's saving, and save something for the long term. And I think even using the terminology of this is your child's money, I think creates that a little bit of emotive part to say, do you really want to take this out? You're taking from your child. And I think,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think the way you've applied it is amazing.
Well, I think the great irony of this is that we really are working with super classic Stokvel principles. There's, we've added a little layer of, I guess, modernity and contemporary finance onto that. But really, that's a really typical way that Stokvels have behaved. You save in this, really as a community. And so you're saving together and you're trying to earn returns in very much with the goal in sight, right? And that's one of the big financial lessons about being goal oriented. And it's just regrettable that goal tends to be so short term. And I think maybe that's one of the key elements that we've managed to shift, is that goal not being a 12-month goal, but really something that's very much more future focused. And yes, we totally guilt our clients around the issue of spending your kids' fund. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But I just find it fascinating that we really aren't doing anything different to what people are actually quite familiar with.
Yes. But it is hard. I mean, in any segment, never mind the sort of like the segment you're talking about, to get people to save in the right long-term vehicle, because the panic, the fear, the wanting to access the money, and
absolutely, and having to persuade them that when the market's going down, Spoon hasn't stolen their money.
I remember getting questions like that before as well. It's like,
indeed,
the concept of a bank account where it stays the same or goes up unless you took it out, but indeed, if it's going down, somebody else took it out.
Indeed. So combining that notion of long-term with returns is also something.
That's really amazing. So I've got a question here, and I'm not entirely sure. The question is, how does one invest directly in Spoon Money? Now, I'm not sure if they mean as a shareholder or if they mean as in I want to be part of the Stokvel. So
well, we have an application. Well, let's assume the latter. So if you want to join Spoon Money as a client, there's an application form, which is quite lengthy because we are a registered credit provider, so we do everything by the book, and we ask you all sorts of questions, we feature you, and you send us your money and start saving. Given the nature of our clients' lives, the kind of money in mechanism is not by direct debit, because that would be really hard to do and almost impossible just given the vagaries of those bank accounts. So in fact, it's voluntary, which I also think is such an interesting thing. We are wholly dependent on people making a decision to send us money every month by a certain date. And they do. And and they do it. We have a partnership with a payment gateway, and so you go to a retailer, you have a unique number, you deposit your savings, and that's how it happens.
It's quite interesting as well, even that behaviorally, when you give somebody, like, it's your responsibility. I'm not going to chase up on you. You decide.
Absolutely.
Nikki, do you want to just share your website so that if this person does want to go on?
Well, if it's a shareholder question, roll up. Absolutely. It's www.spoonmoney.com.
Okay, great. So yes, I think a lot of lessons that we can learn there, and really, really amazing things you've done, because we've been all in the industry struggling to get those things right. And we're still all learning, and
as are we. Thank you, Tracy.
Cool. Thanks, Nikki.